So, as we've kind of alluded to already, in the US, where many of our podcast listeners are located, there is a general sense that the church and Christianity itself is declining. But the Center for the Study of Global Christianity has perhaps found something different. So, what does the research that the center has done reveal about the state of the church worldwide?
So, as it turns out, Christianity is shrinking in some places and is growing in others. So, with 200 and some odd countries, every country is really telling a different story. Like a place like the Democratic Republic of Congo was 1% Christian in 1900. It's 95% Christian today. So, that's quite a transformation over time. But a place like Turkey was 22% Christian in 1900, and it's 0.2% Christian today. Christianity is dynamic in the sense that, events like wars and famines and genocides can have a big impact, or people convert to Christianity, like in the Democratic Republic of Congo. But in much of the Western world, there has been shrinkage, in the percentage of people who are Christians. And some of that is younger people leaving the churches, and the rise of the nuns, NONES. That's a real thing. But it's also the movement of people as well. People are moving around. And one reason the United States is becoming less Christian is that people from other faiths are coming and living here, which is not a bad thing, especially for Christians to have contact with people of other backgrounds. So it's kind of complicated. And while Christianity is shrinking in the traditional sense in the United States, there's also the influx of large numbers of Christians from all over the world, which has changed the character of Christianity by having people from everywhere come here and with all different cultural backgrounds and languages. So actually, it's a difficult question to answer. Personally, I can say, I may be getting ahead of myself a little bit, but I said this on a television interview once, which was kind of shocking, I guess, for the person asking me. And they were saying, don't you want the U.S. to become 100% Christian? And I said, well, actually, I think it'd be better if it was 33% Christian, like 1 out of 3. And I said, the reason is that all around the world, Christianity is about a third of the world's population, if you take the whole world's population. And really an ideal situation, if you're a missions-minded person, is for Christians to have close contact with people who've never heard. So why put all the Christians in one country and have another country with no Christians? So why not just see Christians spread out evenly around the world so that every country in the world is 33% Christian, which I still think is a good idea. It's not going to happen, but just for the sake of illustration. So if you're worried about Christianity declining, put it in global perspective. And so anyway, I think it's a good question, but it's a complicated one in today's world. So
let's follow that thread a little bit to look at things globally, because I think something that, again, as admittedly Americans, we can become a little self-centered, I think, in our thinking and not have a global mindset. But as we look at the world and we think about what is happening and what God is doing, and you kind of alluded to this, that there is growth, that yes, there might be decline here in the US, but there is growth elsewhere. What are you seeing in regards to that growth? In what areas of the world does it seem like Christianity is rising? More and more people are self-identifying as believers?
Right. Well, maybe we can start with the big picture, because that's really the most interesting aspect of this. And that is, our encyclopedia that I mentioned earlier looks at Christians in detail in every country from the year 1900 to 2050. So we go into the future as well. Our main finding, really, this idea of people becoming Christians in some places and leaving in others, has led us to the idea that there's been a huge shift, which is probably the best word, especially for people who count. It's like a demographic shift, a shift in the center of gravity. We talk about it that way. And in one sense, it's really simple because, let's say in 1900, 82% of all Christians were Europeans or North Americans, all right? Today, let's say in 2020, it's 33%, which means the other way around, in what's called the Global South, which is Africa, Asia, Latin America, and Oceania, only 18% of all Christians were in those areas in 1900. And today, 67% are, which happens to be two-thirds. So two-thirds of all Christians in the world live in the Global South and one-third in the North. So that's a big shift. And for evangelicals, it's even greater. So evangelicals, which are a subset of all Christians, because when I talk about Christians, I mean Catholics, Orthodox, Presbyterians, Pentecostals, everybody. So if we isolate the evangelical world was 92% Western, 92% in the global North, and today is 77% in the global South. And Pentecostals are even further south. 86% of all Pentecostals today are in the global South. So that's quite a shift. The good news is that most people who've never heard the gospel are in the global South, in Asia in particular. So it's good that Christianity has shifted in that sense. Another way to think about this is the shift in mother tongues. In other words, what language do Christians speak? The number one mother tongue since about 1970s or 1980 is actually Spanish. Not because of Spain, of course, but because of Latin America. So that's the number one language that Christians speak as a mother tongue. Number two is English. And of course, people in India speak English as the mother tongue. Many people do. So it's not merely the United States and Britain and so on. And then the number three mother tongue is Portuguese, which is not because of Portugal, but because of Brazil. So it's more of the Latin American side. Number four is Russian because of the size of the Russian Orthodox Church. And number five is perhaps the most surprising and new one, and that's Mandarin Chinese is the fifth largest mother tongue. And if we went down the list, and it's in our encyclopedia and atlas and that sort of a thing, you'd see, in a sense, languages of the global South moving up the list and the North languages moving down. So that's one really big change over time. And maybe just briefly to say that it's such a good change because Christianity is not really meant to be one group of people or one language and that sort of a thing, or from one place, let's say Europe. And in fact, in the very earliest years of Christianity, even for the first 1,000 years of Christianity, the majority of Christians were Africans and Asians. But that fact is not very well known because of European dominance in Christianity from the year 1000 right up until in the 1980s even. So we're living with the reality of this great shift, but our mindset is still in this second 1,000 years that we're a European religion, or we're a white religion, or we're a Western religion. When I was sharing the gospel with Cambodians, they really didn't want to or need to join a European religion. They have their own culture, which is beautiful in light of the good news. And we look more like Revelation 7:9 now, which is every tongue and tribe, than we did 100 years ago, or even 60 or 70 years ago. And I think the challenge for American Christians is a lot of people who are seeing the decline wish we could be like we were in the 1950s or something, go back. But there's no going back. We're actually moving in the opposite direction, which is which is looks more like what you read about in the Bible. I don't know how else to say it. So I think it's an exciting time to be a Christian. Let's put it that way.